Chapter 111, Nail Down the Song. When Li Fan saw Zhang Han, with Meng Meng in his arms on the first floor, he walked towards him excitedly. "Ha, ha, ha, Mr. Zhang, nice to meet you." Li Fan effusively held out his hands. Zhang Han drew out a hand and shook with him. "Hello, Mr. Zhang, I don't know what you like since it's our first meeting, so I just bought some fruit." Xuanhuan up the bag in his hand. "Put it over there." Zhang Han nodded and motioned for the tea table opposite. "Fruit. Meng Meng wants to pick," Meng Meng said, waving her small palms. Xian was rather a fruit lover and she used to eat some every day when she was in North America. Simultaneously, Meng Meng had a passion for fruits, for she had been eating fruits since childhood. However, since she was with Zhang Han, she did not eat fruits frequently, because Zhang Han planned to plant fruit trees himself and turned up his nose at the fruits outside. Besides, the fruit market was completely profitable but chaotic at the same time. Not all fruits were as nutritious as explained. Take apples, for example. Many apples on the market suffered problems of pesticide residue, which could not be removed by washing with water. Therefore, the organic fruits, as well as the fruits cultivated without pesticides, would be prohibitively expensive, but not all of them were of good quality. You got what you paid for after all. Zhao Feng, who was standing nearby, quickly took the fruit bag when he heard that the little princess wanted to eat fruit. He then went to the kitchen, washed some grapes, bananas and other fruits and put them into a fruit tray. He acted like a waiter. More importantly, his behavior meant respect for Zhang Han. If a person respected him, he would treat the person equally. Although Zhang Han never said anything about these things, he had seen it all. Zhao Feng washed the fruit and put it on the tea table in front of the sofa. Papa, put Meng Meng down, I'm going to eat fruit." Meng Meng wriggled in Zhang Han's arms and looked really cute. Li Fan and Xuanhuan were overjoyed to see Meng Meng and they both exclaimed with admiration. "Mr. Zhang's daughter is really beautiful." "That's right, it's the first time I have seen such a pretty girl." If the two praised Meng Meng before, she would have been chuffed to talk with them, but now the little princess was focused on the fruit. No sooner had Zhang Han put her on the ground than she ran towards it. Zhao Feng hesitated, considering that he had better make himself scarce if the boss talked with others, but his curiosity stuck him on the sofa. Mr. Zhang, Li Fan wanted to get straight to the point to talk about the song after a while. However, Xuanhuan directly interrupted. "It's not easy to compose such a high-quality song. I think Mr. Zhang has high attainments in music." "Yeah?" Zhang Han nodded calmly, but he felt a little weird. Arguably, he was only a porter of this song. He just wrote the song in advance which did not emerge yet. However, he felt enjoyable that people spoke highly of him. "Well, I want to deliberate over some details with you. Why don't we find a recording studio to listen to it?" Xuanhuan said with a tone of inquiry. "No, just sing here." "Ah, here?" Xuanhuan was slightly stunned and said hesitantly, "How do I sing here?" "Play the music, you sing and I'll just listen." Zhang Han said casually. "Well." Xuanhuan gave a wry smile and said, "All right." Then he took the hat off his head. Zhao Feng, who was already familiar with his voice, recognized him at once. "Xuanhuan, why does he come here? He's probably looking for the boss to study the song. Is the boss still good at music?" Zhao Feng scanned back and forth in surprise on Zhang Han and Xuanhuan, but then felt relieved. He shook his head with a smile, accusing himself of making an unnecessary fuss. "Boss must have an ear for music, for he plays the piano very well." Zhang Han led Xuanhuan and Li Fan to the counter, opened the laptop and played the accompaniment. "Do I sing unaccompanied?" Xuanhuan asked doubtfully. People could hear the sound source with high quality in the recording studio. Conversely, if he sang in this way, some details would not be displayed well, and he still felt a little awkward. "Yes." Hearing Zhang Han's response, Xuanhuan nodded helplessly. He cleared his throat and said, "Then I'll sing in this way." Please wait a minute and let me simmer a bit. Zhang Han turned off the background music in view of his words. Ahem, Xuanhuan began to look for the feeling of this song. In addition to Meng, who was nibbling at fruit at that time, Zhao Feng had been staring at this side with curiosity. He had already realized that the boss wrote him a song, and he was still curious about the standard of the song. Finally, a minute later, Xuanhuan said in a slightly deep voice, "Let's begin." Zhang Han played the accompaniment. As the background music boomed out from the high-quality audio, a low piano prelude sounded. Simply, let's speak in simple terms. Please ignore the temperamental state of mind. You aren't an actress. Don't make up any of those plots. A connoisseur did endow the song with life. The first sentence of the song sang by Xuanhuan made Zhang Han nod slightly. The song was given strong emotions. Xuanhuan lost himself gradually. His eyes narrowed slightly, showing and interpreting the beauty of this song. After all, I am the only audience for your show. You express a slight disappointment of letting go. It seems that our feelings for each are still lingering, clinging to the past. Breaking up is easier said than done. The more we try to hold on to, the more we fear to let go. If we can predict how the show is going to end, is it still worth to watch? I am striving so hard to keep up with your performance. Except for Zhang Han, other people were all intoxicated in this song. This was the charm of the song. The loud dance music could set people's wildness free, while the melodious music could let people relax both physically and mentally. At this time, however, this actress was a melodious song with strong deep emotions. Li Fan breathed with his eyes closed, and Zhao Feng was also somewhat dazed. Even the little princess put down the grapes at this moment, looking at Xuanhuan, who was singing. A song ended eventually. No one spoke within 10 seconds because they were all intoxicated in the aftertaste of the song. Pia. Zhao Feng came to himself and could not help clapping his hands and praising. Great, it's really great. Mr. X sings very well. You're flattering me. Xuanhuan smiled and saluted to Zhao Feng. I don't know if I listened to the song the first time, but I am engrossed in it when I heard it again. The longing remains, but the person who is my dream is missing. The artistic conception of this song is wonderful and fascinating. Li Fan opened his eyes and looked at Zhang Han with wonder and admiration. Mr. Zhang was indeed a man of great attainments in music, for he could write such a classical song. Even Li Fan became more respectful. He thought Mr. Zhang deserved his respect. It sounds great. You're so awesome. Meng could not resist praising him. Thank you for your compliment. Xuanhuan smiled kindly at Meng. But you're no match for my mama. My mama sings, best in the world. Meng's limpid eyes were brimming with seriousness. She muttered and then continued to enjoy grapes. In the little princess's mind, Mama sang best and Papa cooked best. Furthermore, they were the best in various fields. Ha. Her words did evoke the laughter of several others. Li Fan and Xuanhuan did not think anything of it, but just thought this was Meng's worship of her mama. But if they learned Xian was her mother, they would be shocked for a while. What do you think, Mr. Zhang? Xuanhuan looked at Zhang Han and asked, looking forward to his comments. No problem, this is your song originally. Zhang Han smiled faintly. It was originally his song, so there was not anything wrong. Xuanhuan, however, misunderstood that this song was specially written for him by Zhang Han, which made him excited. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Xuanhuan nodded repeatedly and asked again, is there any difference between what I sang and what you had thought? There's no difference, it sounds very well. Then let's talk about the cost of the song. Xuanhuan glanced at Li Fan. Li Fan took the hint and said, well, Mr. Zhang, this song is very suitable for us, so we made a concession in price. It's unnecessary, that price is okay. Zhang Han directly shook his head. The purpose of writing the song so that it could be published in advance was just to listen to it while he was cooking. As for making money, Zhang Han had never thought about it. Even if he wanted to make money, he would not use this devious and troublesome method. So he just asked for 100,000 yuan casually. It was really profitable for Li Fan using just 100,000 yuan, but he felt sorry and embarrassed on account of its high quality. The two, therefore, had discussed and decided to raise the price before they came. After hearing Zhang Han's refusal, Li Fan was shocked and said, "But," before he had finished speaking, Zhang Han shook his head and said, "The rest needs no telling, give me 100,000 yuan and this song is yours." Li Fan and Xuanhuan looked at each other hearing his words. They found that Mr. Zhang seemed not to care about fame and wealth. After all, if this song became popular, Mr. Zhang would get a lot of shares. "Mr. Zhang, listen to me." Li Fan gave a wry smile and said, "Well, I've come up with two ways to sign the contract. One is using 100,000 yuan to sign a sharecropping contract, and the other is using 200,000 yuan to buy out this song. What do you think?" "Then 200,000 yuan is fine." Zhang Han simply replied, "Okay." Li Fan nodded in a daze. Why did he feel so easy to negotiate a successful sale here? So Li Fan started the transaction process and the signatures were signed by Zhao Feng, while Zhang Han went directly to the sofa and played with Meng Meng. He really didn't care about the matter, which made Li Fan feel very uncomfortable. Talking about a contract was either full of hidden dangers or filled with happiness. But Zhang Han was cold at this point. Chapter 112, He Goes Soft. The contract was signed by Li Fan and Zhao Feng. Although Zhao Feng felt dizzy about the entertainment circle, he perused the contract word by word like a lovely baby. At this time in the restaurant, he immediately asked Li Fan where he did not understand. While Xuanhuan stepped towards the sofa after looking at them for a while and sat on Meng Meng's side. "Little beauty, why are you so beautiful and lovely?" Xuanhuan said, smiling. "Am I very lovely and beautiful?" Meng Meng's big watery eyes flickered, showing her rejoicing. "Of course, you are the most beautiful and lovely girl I have ever seen. Ho ho, little brother, you're cute and beautiful too." Meng Meng chuckled and said, "You're wrong, little brother should be handsome. Who do you think is more handsome between your father and me?" Xuanhuan teased Meng Meng. Meng Meng was stunned and then snorted. Her little body squeezed into Zhang Han's arms and said, "Papa is handsome, my papa is the most handsome person. You're not pretty anymore, hum. Ha, ha, ha." Xuanhuan laughed loudly. Zhang Han also stood by, chuckling and shaking his head. For him, as long as Meng Meng was happy, nothing else mattered. "Brother Zhang, it's very kind of your daughter." Xuanhuan deemed that it was the high time for him to call him brother instead of Mr. Zhang, which sounded closer. "Of course." Zhang Han replied with a smile. Strong feelings of pride welled up on his face as if he was completely content to have such a lovely and clever daughter. "By the way, Brother Zhang, let me ask you something." Xuanhuan thought for a while and said, "Okay. Under what circumstances did you write this actress? I think you're an excellent musician." He felt this song really penetrated in his heart. Therefore, seeing Zhang Han at this time, he did agree that great minds think alike. Zhang Han smiled without saying any words. Under what circumstances did he write it? It was written in the case of rebirth. You could also write this song if you were reborn. Xuanhuan said after a while, "Brother Zhang, can I leave you my contact number? We can probe into music later." "I have no time." Zhang Han refused directly. Xuanhuan was slightly surprised and then gave a wry smile unceasingly. He, however, understood Zhang Han to some extent at the same time. Literates sometimes had an eccentric character, which was certainly indisputable. Zhang Han was a super-talented literary man in his mind. But he had never expected that the things would turn better. After pouring cold water on his enthusiasm by Brother Zhang, he became excited again because of Zhang Han's next words. "I can write a few more songs for you." "What?" Li Fan, who came over after signing the contract, was overjoyed when he heard this. He said vexedly, "That's great, Mr. Zhang is a man of great talent, the songs written by him are definitely good. Then we'll just wait for Mr. Zhang's good news. In fact, Li Fan did not say genuinely. Because classical songs were rare and hard to compose, even those famous songwriters' songs were not always or very few classical. Nevertheless, Li Fan would say some words of courtesy. After all, this actress was truly presented before them. However, to their surprise, Zhang Han said casually after looking at the clock, "Let's make it now." "What, now?" These people were all shocked. "Yeah?" Zhang Han nodded and held Meng Meng in his arms, saying, "Shall we go to the recording studio, Meng Meng?" There was no doubt that Zhang Han would not go if Meng Meng refused. Unfortunately, Meng Meng nodded after speculation and said, "Okay, go to the recording studio to play." Meng Meng also wants to sing. "Well, let Meng Meng sing first then." Zhang Han smiled and said. As the words fell, he took the lead to go out, holding Meng Meng in his arms. Li Fan and Xuanhuan followed him. Zhao Feng kept up with them on second thoughts, for it was convenient for him to have lunch later. So Zhao Feng drove his car and followed last. In the meantime, on the opposite side of the street, in a black Mercedes, a brush-cut man with a scorpion tattoo on his neck smiled sardonically after he saw this scene. "Zhao Feng, I just haven't seen you for a few days. Why did you stoop to the condition where you work for a restaurant owner?" he said in a cold tone, full of sarcasm. Then he started the engine and turned to leave. During this period, he picked up his cell phone and dialed Lord Tang. The previous news that Zhao Feng works as a waiter in a restaurant can be confirmed. In my view, if he really has a problem, this restaurant. The staff could not control themselves when they saw Xuanhuan came to the recording studio once again, so they insisted on taking some photos with him. "Papa, Meng Meng still wants to sing." On entering the recording studio, Meng Meng reminded, "Of course Meng Meng can sing first." Zhang Han smiled and said, "What kind of songs can you sing?" Meng Meng was surprised with big shining eyes. Then she pouted, stretched out her small palms, counted the fingers of her left hand using her right hand and said, "Meng Meng can sing 1, 2, 3. Several English songs." "Oh, Meng Meng can sing English songs? It's amazing." Li Fan pretended to be surprised and said. Meng Meng looked at Li Fan after hearing his words and said solemnly, "I can sing several." "Great. Meng Meng is so great." Zhao Feng said with a smile. "Which song do you want to sing?" Zhang Han asked. "I'm going to sing a price tag." The little princess had already started to speak in English in advance. "Yo, Meng Meng's English is very good." Li Fan was slightly stunned. He had not expected Meng Meng to speak English so fluently. Children who can speak English from an early age, as far as they were concerned, were all highly educated. Although English-speaking children were common in Hong Kong, it was rare for them saw children who can speak English as fluent as she. If he knew Meng Meng was born in North America, he would not have been so amazed at her fluency. "Okay, sing this song first." Zhang Han stood in front of the microphone holding Meng Meng, with a queen-size earphone beside Meng Meng's ear. Soon, the accompaniment was heard. "Okay, handsome daddy, brother and Meng Meng, you ready?" Meng Meng was so familiar with this song that she changed the original lyrics. The little princess acted cutely when she was ready to sing. Her big limpid eyes twinkled and her little head wagged from side to side with the rhythm. She pouted and began to sing. "Seems like everybody's got a price. Money, money, money." Meng Meng's childish and crisp voice made people intoxicated the instant she started to sing. Her fluent and pure English, especially, surprised Li Fan, Xuanhuan, and even Zhao Feng. Li Fan even thought that Meng Meng had completely displayed the children's version of price tag. Apart from her timbre, she did not sing out of tune at all. Mr. Zhang is really awesome. His was of great attainment in music, for he has cultivated such an outstanding daughter. Li Fan's heart was filled with admiration. An English song was sung by Meng Meng without any halts. Peer, peer, peer. After the song was over, all the people including the recording staff outside clapped uncontrollably. Wow, Meng Meng, you're so amazing. How fluent Meng Meng's English is. Their compliments made Meng Meng raise her head. She smiled happily and could not help saying at the same time, Mama, my mama sings better. The crowd laughed while Meng Meng cried for singing the next song. The recording studios seemed to become Meng Meng's toy at this time. She sang one by one and Zhang Han held Meng Meng all the time. It took about half an hour for Meng Meng to sing. Meng Meng, just sit over there and rest for a while. Papa is going to make the song for them. Zhang Han took out a piece of tissue to wipe the sweat from Meng Meng's forehead and then said with a smile, well. Okay, Papa, hurry up. Meng Meng is hungry. Okay, I'll finish it soon. Zhang Han nodded his head. Li Fan curled his lips hearing what he said. How can it be so easy to make a song? No matter how accomplished you were in music, you could not make it whenever you wanted to. Moreover, it was not a song but a scream if it was done at such a fast speed. And it seemed that Zhang Han had not prepared. Even if he was freaking awesome, he was impossible to make a song in a short period of time. However, it proved that Zhang Han did not make a song in this short period of time. Because he did too directly. Li Fan's expressions during this period could also make up an image type. At first, he was indifferent and did not believe it. But after witnessing Zhang Han produce a very good musical accompaniment for half an hour, Li Fan's eyes already contained surprises. Meanwhile, he saw Zhang Han fill out the lyrics in 2 minutes. Li Fan's eyes had gradually widened. Soon, the first song was auditioned by Xuanhuan, while Li Fan's mouth could already be stuffed with an egg when he listened to the demo. More exaggeratedly, people could almost saw his stomach. Xuanhuan performed much better than him because he was completely absorbed in the world of the song and could not extricate himself. After finished making the first song, Zhang Han began to produce the accompaniment of the second, while Xuanhuan sang several more times. Now our relationship is ambiguous anyway, so you don't have to feel embarrassed to find a match. The accompaniment of the second song came out soon and its lyrics were completed in less than 2 minutes. Like the waves crashed into the hills. How long can you hold on? He may only praise you and then return. How long can the delicate and charming flowers last before you come? Or was broken by the poet and sad to change the song. At the end of the second song, Li Fan was completely muddled. His eyes were about to fall out and his body was like an old man, quivering, shaking hands, pointing to Zhang Han. His lips trembled and wanted to say something, only to find that his tongue did not work. So he had a red face and tried his best to speak. Eventually, he yelled at the top of his voice. How can it be so fast? It's impossible. It's out of the question. Meng Meng, who was playing nearby, looked at Li Fan strangely. She felt a little scared and said in a low voice, What happened to that brother? He goes soft. Zhao Feng gently patted Meng Meng on her back and said, Go soft. Meng Meng's big clear eyes were full of curiosity, asking in a childish tone, Well, what's the meaning of going soft? It's just like him. Yes. His crazy expression means he goes soft. Zhao Feng glanced at Li Fan, who looked insane once again and gave a firm answer. Chapter 113, Little High-Stole Chickens. Meng Meng's twitched her small mouth and showed sympathy. She said childishly, It's really dreadful to go soft. That's all right, don't be afraid, I'm here to protect you. Zhao Feng saw the little princess's lovely face and smiled softly. In general, children's expressions and occasional utterances were very cute, but there were also many children who were naughty, who were self-centered and made noises regardless of others. Sometimes such children would be looked down upon by other people. Meng Meng, however, who lived with only one parent, was much more cleverer than children of the same age on account of Xian's guidance. Of course, Xian played an important role, for she was not an ordinary person but had a strong background. However, Zhang Han's strong education and doting had quietly changed Meng Meng since they lived together for less than a month. This change was nothing more than being more outgoing. Furthermore, she was gentle, generous and beloved. Even Zhao Feng, a callous man, always showed his gentleness in front of her. Not to mention how Meng Meng played here. Xuanhuan was so excited on the other side that he faltered. "Brother Zhang, you're so amazing. These two songs are after my own heart, and how do you name them?" "The first song is called Ambiguity and the second is called Tyro," Zhang Han said calmly. "Ambiguity, Tyro, good names." Xuanhuan's eyes brightened and considered these songs were particularly suited to himself. "Ha, ha, ha, Brother Zhang." Li Fan's acted a little exaggerated, saying loudly, "I wouldn't hesitate to die the cruelest death, and my admiration for you is like the vast ocean." "Well, Li Fan?" Xuanhuan said, feeling a little embarrassed. "Oh, my God, 3 songs, 3 new songs, 3 classic new songs." Li Fan said excitedly, "Old X, the concert on the 15th will be out of question absolutely." "Right, it'll be okay depending on these 3 songs." Xuanhuan's face became animated, then he looked at Zhang Han gratefully and said, "Brother Zhang, thanks to your help, thank you very much. These 2 songs, the same price, but I have a favor to ask," Zhang Han said in a mysterious tone. By virtue of these 2 songs, Zhang Han succeeded in earning 400,000 yuan. After going outside the recording studio, Li Fan and Xuanhuan could not help expressing their thanks until Zhang Han left. "These songs are yours originally." Zhang Han gave Xuanhuan a meaningful smile and turned to get on the car to leave, holding Meng Meng in his arms. When Li Fan lost sight of the panda, he still stood at the side of the car, absent-minded. What kind of person is Brother Zhang? Knowledgeable and versatile, just like an enchanter. Xuanhuan spoke highly of him. It was almost 12 o'clock when they finished all the things. Zhang Han had planned to go to Mount New Moon to catch 2 chickens for lunch, for the quantity of pure yang water increased to 20 liters, which could feed a lot of livestock. Therefore, there was no need to save the livestock's number. He would like to offer better food to members, but time did not permit. So Zhang Han only made egg fried rice and noodle soup at noon. The little princess was especially fond of noodle soup and could eat up a small bowl every time. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, diners almost left. After cleaning up the restaurant, Zhao Feng walked to the front of the sofa. He had attempted to say goodbye to Zhang Han and Meng Meng and back to the company in the afternoon, but Zhang Han said at first, "Will you be occupied this afternoon?" "No." Zhao Feng replied after a while. "Then buy me some livestock," Zhang Han said casually. Zhang Han was not interested in such trivial matters. Actually, he paid great attention to Meng Meng and he felt convenient to order Zhao Feng, the free labor force, around. "Okay, what kind of livestock do you want?" Zhao Feng nodded his head. "Japanese black cattle, Thai lake black swine, and Ujimkin sheep. All I want should be adult and 50 for each type. Meanwhile, I need 50 native chickens, 50 ducks and 50 geese. Take my bank card which was in the drawer and the password is XXXXXX." Zhang Han said casually. Zhao Feng froze after hearing what he said and could not help but sigh for Zhang Han's mightiness. Boss had the demeanor of an expert. He did things at casual and regarded money as dirt. He even spoke out the password of the bank card casually. Zhao Feng was delighted while sighing. The boss told him the password, which meant he had accepted him from the heart. Although Zhao Feng actually did not deal with the boss, he subconsciously approached him. There were 3 reasons. One was that he thought Zhang Han was an ace he admired, the second was because the lovely little princess Meng Meng. The third was because of the love between Zhang Han and Meng Meng. All these reasons let Zhao Feng take the initiative to close him. His gloomy mood had been relieved since he worked in this restaurant, so he was willing to be a waiter at a disadvantage. However, he hardly realized that all these actions gave him good luck. he seized an opportunity which was few in life. The sky high allows birds to fly, the sea wide let fish jump. It would not be long before he knew that his original vision was so narrow. Back to return. Meng Meng immediately put down her toys after she heard Zhang Han's words. She said with eyes sparkling, "Papa, why don't we go shopping?" Meng Meng wants to go shopping with Papa. The little princess liked shopping very much. Meng Meng wants to go? Zhang Han smiled and said, "I'm going to take Meng Meng to Mount New Moon to go sightseeing. Shall we go shopping or go to Mount New Moon?" "Go to Mount New Moon and play with Little Hai." No, go shopping, buy a lot of things." "Oh, go to Mount New Moon, I miss Little Hai." But Meng Meng could not make up her mind, saying, "But Meng Meng still wants to go shopping. What shall we do, Papa?" Meng Meng can't decide it. Ha, ha, ha. Zhang Han burst out laughing and said, "It's simple. Let's go shopping first and then go to Mount New Moon." "Great, great." Meng Meng stood on the sofa with bare feet and jumped up. So Zhang Han went there with Meng Meng. He and Zhao Feng were divided into two groups. Zhao Feng still went to buy the livestock, while Zhang Han drove to the planting base in Eastern and planned to buy some rice and wheat seeds and other vegetables again. In the past few days, the rice in the restaurant was used up. There remained some wheat, but according to the speed of one basin at a time, it was estimated that it would be run out before long. Fortunately, Mount New Moon could fully meet the demand. After buying another big heap of stuff, it was almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon and Mount New Moon began to hum. It was a blockbuster that 150 adult cattle, sheep and pigs walked together. However, under Little Hai's guard, they all honestly came to the Thunder Yang tree and drank some pure yang water in the basin which was prepared in advance. With chickens, ducks, and geese, the 300 livestock consumed 10 liters of pure yang water. On account of their large quantity, 10 liters was enough for each to lick one mouthful, so Zhang Han blended it with spirit water, which had a poor effect, but if let them live in Mount New Moon for a few days, the effect of water would relatively equal to absorbing the pure yang water directly. After drinking the water, the livestock was driven to their respective areas by Little Hai. Little Hai bustled about for half a day and finally made these new arrivals familiar with the environment. After finishing doing, Zhang Han asked Zhao Feng to send the harvested rice and wheat back to the restaurant for processing. Zhao Feng was naturally willing to run errands and return them to the restaurant after being processed. When Zhao Feng came to Mount New Moon again, he saw Zhang Han doing manual labor, so he rolled up his sleeves, directly took off his shoes and socks, rolled up his trouser legs and stepped into the rice fields to work together. Meng Meng was playing with the dogs at this point. After a few days of growth, the size of these dogs had obviously increased. At the same time, they became more cleverer, learning to flatter shamelessly. While Little Hai was elated to see so many animals, its eyes went round and walked close to the chickens slowly when Meng Meng did not pay attention to. Whoosh! Little Hai snapped at a chicken in an instant. His sharp fangs suddenly deprived the chicken of its breath. This scene frightened the other chickens, who kept jumping away from Little Hai. Little Hai glanced at Zhang Han secretly, realizing that Zhang Han did not look this way. Little Hai walked quietly to the side of the dense jungle. Little Hai, where are you going? When Little Hai was about to reach the edge of the jungle, Meng Meng noticed it from a distance. She stood up with a cry and running in small steps. Ow! Little Hai was shocked. It looked at Meng Meng who running over here with an embarrassed face. It was at a loss at this moment and did not know what to do with the chicken in his mouth. On second thoughts, Little Hai lay on the ground as if it had acknowledged its mistake. Little Hai, why did you eat the chicken? Meng Meng ran closer and saw the chicken in Xiao Hai's mouth. Then she stared at Little Hai with big shiny eyes and asked. Oh. Little Hai shook its head repeatedly. You stole the chicken, I'll tell my papa, Meng Meng said and was going to turn around to find her papa, which scared Little Hai. It quickly threw the chicken on the ground, whose embarrassed face showed grievances and mouth pointed to the jungle. "Well, Little Hai. What are you going to do? Where are you going?" Meng Meng pointed to the jungle and said in a childish voice, "Woo-hoo-hoo." Little Hai protruded its big tongue and nodded. Then, shall we adventure?" Meng Meng's eyes brightened. Seeing that the opportunity was coming, Little Hai quickly picked up the chicken and headed for the jungle. The jungle was relatively dense, so the light inside was not bright, even dim. But Meng Meng was not afraid, for the little princess knew Little Hai could protect her. Following Little Hai to walk for 2 minutes, she came to an open space which was several square meters. There stood a megalith. After rounding the megalith, the picture jumped into her sight and Meng Meng's eyes widened. Chapter 114, A Chimpanzee. What came into their views was a chimpanzee. Exactly, it was a chimpanzee. It lay on the backside of the megalith, like a slope, which could be used as a bed for it to lie on. The chimpanzee looked young and was obviously injured, with a little blood beneath its body. It was somewhat weak, whose breathing was short and rapid. Besides, it was rather confusing. However, it looked sharp-featured and 80% similar to Kaiser in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It was definitely a chimpanzee with a good look in its race. Meng Meng's shiny big eyes stared at it for a few seconds and considered it looked like Kaiser, so the little princess said with timidity, "Are you Kaiser?" The chimpanzee opened its eyes hearing the sound of Meng Meng. When it saw a human in front, its eyes narrowed. Human? It hurt so badly and was injured by humans, abominable humans. The chimpanzee's eyes obviously had violence. Ow! Little Hai felt its hostility and its eyes suddenly became hideous. Its nose and face wrinkled up, showing a fierce expression. The fangs in its mouth, which reflected cold light, seemed to say that if the chimpanzee dared to have any connection with the little master, it would let the chimpanzee be aware of its force. In the meantime, Little Hai was a little angry. He took care of it to get several chickens for the chimpanzee to eat and let it stay in the territory. Now, how dared it to show its horns to his little master? The chimpanzee came to itself. Seeing Little Hai's manner, it showed fear. "Are you Kaiser?" Meng Meng asked again. The little princess also thought it was Kaiser. After all, this handsome chimpanzee only existed in the movie. Who? The chimpanzee ignored Meng Meng and leaned its head back again. It felt weaker and weaker, knowing that it would not last long. The reason was abominable humans. It still remembered those ferocious human beings holding something like long sticks, shot small stones into its body. Who? The chimpanzee exhaled a long breath again. Why do you ignore Meng Meng? Meng Meng said, pouting. Her big eyes were full of suspicion because she did not see the blood hidden under its black hair. Meng Meng stepped forward with curiosity, stretched out her small palm to pat on the chimpanzee's hair and said in a childish tone at the same time, "Well, what's the matter with you?" When Meng Meng touched the chimpanzee's hair with her hand, it gave a violent shudder. Out of self-protection, its body moved in a confusional state. It stared at Meng Meng, opened its mouth, letting out a cry and raised his arm to push Meng Meng. Ow ow! Little Hai, which had been very cautious, became angry at this time. He roared and rushed forward like lightning. Hardly had the chimpanzee raised its arm when Little Hai threw it to the ground. Little Hai's fangs showed a sense of killing for the first time, biting at its neck. The sharp teeth easily punctured the chimpanzee's skin and the blood flowed out at that time. Simultaneously, Little Hai's claws pressed firmly against the chimpanzee's limbs, making it unable to move at all. Confronted with Little Hai, the chimpanzee was defenseless. Even the strongest chimpanzee would accept such an outcome in the face of Little Hai, let alone this chimpanzee which was underage. Witnessing this scene, Meng Meng's eyes gradually widened. Then, ah! Meng Meng screamed with fear. On the other side, Zhang Han and Zhao Feng had just planted the rice seedlings in the rice field. Boss, it's undeniable that doing farm work occasionally is really romantic. Zhao Feng said, putting on his shoes and smiling. That's right. Zhang Han nodded his head. Now I indeed envy boss's life. I'm bound to experience this kind of life later. Although Zhao Feng occupied a high position in the corporation, he did not like his present life. The pastoral and leisure life of the boss was exactly what he yearned for. You'll have a chance. No sooner had Zhang Han began to speak than a scream of Meng Meng came from the forest. Zhang Han stopped instantly and his face changed. Hurry up. Zhao Feng was about to have a look. However, as soon as he said this, even his foot had not been lifted yet, Zhang Han's body began to move. Whoosh! Zhang Han ran towards the dense forest at tremendous speed. As his tiptoes pointed on the grass tip, he ran 10 meters in a step. It took only 10 seconds for him to run 200 meters. Faced with the fish pond, Zhang Han did not stop. His tiptoes suddenly pointed on a holly, which made his body leap up. After going forward about 20 meters, Zhang Han's feet touched the surface of the water a few times and he got across the fish pond, like lightning, running through the livestock area and disappearing in the jungle. While Zhao Feng still kept the posture, even his feet had not lifted. His eyes gradually widened, filled with shock, horror, and disbelief. "What's this?" Zhao Feng murmured. He only sensed scalp numb at this moment and even his body was totally stiff. He could not believe what he saw, but this scene actually happened in front of him. Boss, he's really a martial arts master. Oh, my God. Zhao Feng suspected his life at this point. He had thought the boss was very strong, but he had not expected to be so formidable. The boss walked on the top of the grass and ran on the water, which was beyond his imagination. I have to go to see. Zhao Feng shivered and found himself stiff and staggered as he stepped forward. It's so terrifying. Zhao Feng gave a wry smile, stayed in position to move his body and then hurried to the forest. But the phone in his pocket rang after he just ran a few steps. Zhao Feng picked up the phone as he ran. When he heard the news, Zhao Feng's face changed. I know it. Zhao Feng's face was drawn. He stopped after hanging up the phone. On second thoughts, he still ran to the dense forest, intending to take a look at the situation before making any plans. When arrived at the site of the incident, Zhao Feng was slightly shocked. Zhao Feng shook his head with a wry smile. This scene also exceeded his expectation. A chimpanzee lay on a stone, seriously wounded. Little Hai glared at it while Zhang Han was comforting Meng Meng, holding her in his arms. Meng Meng was not afraid in the arms of Papa. She stared at the chimpanzee with tears. How did the chimpanzee get here? Zhao Feng asked doubtfully. However, he still had something urgent to deal with, so after he made sure nothing happened, Zhao Feng said to Zhang Han, Boss, I have something to deal with, I'll go back first. Okay. Zhang Han nodded his head. Zhao Feng hurried away. All right. Zhang Han stroked Meng Meng's back with his right hand and whispered, Don't be afraid, it's all right. Zhang Han reproached himself when he appeased Meng Meng. Subconsciously, he thought Mount New Moon was absolutely safe, but he did not expect a chimpanzee would come here. Fortunately, Meng Meng was not frightened, otherwise, Zhang Han would have blamed himself more. Papa, seemingly, it doesn't like Meng Meng. Meng Meng felt aggrieved, pouting. She still remembered the chimpanzee frightened her just now. Papa loves you, don't worry about other things. Zhang Han said with a chuckle. But it looks so pitiful. Meng Meng looked at the chimpanzee with her big eyes unblinking and said, Meng Meng, I told you once, we don't need to pity anyone, including animals. Zhang Han, holding Meng Meng, turned to walk outward and said at the same time, Well, let's go home. Little Hai glanced at the chimpanzee calmly and turned to leave. Chimpanzee's neck was bitten. Although Little Hai did not exert too much force, it shed a lot of blood, making it gradually blur. He stared at the sky, remembering its parents and other relatives. In order to protect him, its parents were killed under the gun of human beings. He came here after twists and turns and managed to find a chance to escape. but he was shot and failed to escape at last. At that time, its eyes were mixed with sadness, soreness, remembrance, happiness, etc. It subconsciously looked at Meng Meng and shook its head slightly at her with regret gleamed in its eyes. Papa, it's so poor, what's wrong with it, is it going to die? Meng Meng doesn't want it to die. Meng Meng wriggled constantly in the arms of Zhang Han after seeing this. Zhang Han stopped walking and touched Meng Meng's head helplessly, sighing slightly. Meng Meng is really kind. Then he turned around, glanced at the chimpanzee and said coldly, if you can walk to the top of the mountain from here, then I'll give you a chance. When the words fell, Zhang Han stepped away directly. Little Hai and the chimpanzee were both stunned. Little Hai could understand it and it was a little excited, while the chimpanzee was in a daze. It could only figure out some simple sign language rather than what he said. Little Hai pointed to the top of the mountain and made some gestures. After a while, the chimpanzee finally realized that it would be saved as long as it reached the top of the mountain. Therefore, the chimpanzee roused itself, spared no efforts to stand up and staggered to the outside. It was seriously injured. When it came out of the dense forest, it was too tired to climb. However, after a few seconds, it stood up firmly again. While Zhang Han had already stood under the thunder yang tree holding Meng Meng at this time. Papa, it's too poor, let's help it, okay? Meng Meng murmured. It'll come up. Zhang Han replied in a low voice. Meanwhile, he sized up the chimpanzee, squinting his eyes. Chapter 115, Butler Day. If you want beauty, you have to go through hardships. Only those who are tough can achieve their goals. Zhang Han lightly pulled a line. Papa, what are you talking about? What do you mean by tough goals? Meng Meng asked, confused. That is to say, only those who are tenacious can realize their dreams. Zhang Han touched Meng Meng's head and said, just like this chimpanzee, I didn't want to save it because it scared Meng Meng, but because Meng Meng was so kind, I gave it a chance. Meng Meng was muddled but finally managed to understand Zhang Han. Her big eyes brightened and she said, so, did I save it? Yes. Zhang Han smiled softly. Yeah, I saved it. Meng Meng's big bright eyes were shining. She looked at the chimpanzees in the distance and called in a childish tone, come on, come on. Under the eyes of Zhang Han, Meng Meng, and Little Hai, the chimpanzee walked up step by step with difficulty. Even the dogs that passed by the pet area looked horrified when they saw the chimpanzee covered in blood smell, but gradually they seemed to realize something and gathered around the chimpanzee to cheer for it. 1, 2, 3 steps. Finally, the chimpanzee stood in front of Zhang Han with indomitable willpower. It looked at Zhang Han with expectant gaze, and then his body collapsed. Hiss, phew, hiss, phew. The chimpanzee was breathing rapidly, with an expression that said, I'm dying. Oh, Papa, what's wrong with it, Papa, please save it. Meng Meng said in an anxious tone. The chimpanzee squinted slightly at Meng Meng. It knew that the little princess in front of it was trying to save itself. Zhang Han, on the other hand, pondered on it nearby. I can give it some pure yang water to save it, and let it leave Mount New Moon afterward. Or, it can also stay as a senior butler, but as a senior butler, consuming pure yang water is not enough. One must know that the junior butler, Little Hai, has absorbed a trace of the origin of Thunder Yang Tree, so Jade fired you. Zhang Han shook his head slightly and said, well, lucky you. Zhang Han pressed his palm against the Thunder Yang Tree and first took out 3 liters of pure yang water. Gurgle. Zhang Han lifted up the bucket and poured the water into the chimpanzee's mouth. At first, it was a little weak, but after drinking less than half of it, it began to hold the bucket itself while drinking the water. After drinking 3 liters, its consciousness recovered a lot. It started to look at Zhang Han timidly, carefully placed the bucket at Zhang Han's feet, and looked at him pitifully. If it could speak, it would certainly say 2 words. Not enough. Zhang Han saw this and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then, he had to hold a bucket again and filled it with 3 liters of water. Gurgle. It gulped down the water, and after a few mouthfuls, it drank up 3 liters of pure yang water again. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The chimpanzee once again placed the bucket at Zhang Han's feet, and it nuzzled and made several noises to Zhang Han. Even Meng could understand its expectant eyes. Oh, how can you drink so much, Papa? Look at it, it still wants more. Meng's big shining eyes were full of questions. She couldn't understand how this chimpanzee could drink so much when it could barely reach her papa's stomach. And Zhang Han, after seeing the chimpanzee, his mouth twitched slightly. 10 liters of pure yang water left. It has already drunk 6 liters, yet it still wants more. What a big appetite. But Zhang Han knew that its body still had room for pure yang water, which left Zhang Han interested in it. It seemed that this chimpanzee's physique talent was quite good. When it absorbed jade fire dew, its strength would probably be far stronger. However, since Zhang Han had decided to take the chimpanzee as the chief steward of the territory, he was willing to pay his price, so Zhang Han gave it 2 more liters pure yang water. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The chimpanzee happily took the bucket and gulped it down again. This time, it did not ask for more after drinking up. Hiccup. It was already belching after drinking the pure yang water. Then, the chimpanzee seemed to squeeze his body with a lot of effort. Soon, several bullets fell from its injured skin, while those infected wounds were instantly healed. 8 liters of pure yang water made its body alive again. This is not enough. Zhang Han spread out his palm to it and said, "Give me your fingers." Oh? The chimpanzee was confused. Looking at Zhang Han, it was thinking. Finally, it obediently stuck out his big head and leaned it against Zhang Han's palm, rubbing it gently, like a baby nestling beside his parents. "Papa is mine." "What are you doing? Get off him." Meng was very alert and scolded it. Her arms clutched onto Zhang Han's neck. She rested her head on Zhang Han's chest as if she was claiming her territory. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. The chimpanzee lifted its head and looked at Meng. It spread out its arms and made an innocent expression, shaking its head repeatedly. It was saying that it was not trying to steal her papa. Ha ha ha. Zhang Han was a little helpless and at the same time found them amusing. He pointed to the chimpanzee's hand and said, "Give me your hand." Oh oh? The chimpanzee thought for a while and pointed to the right hand with his left hand. After seeing Zhang Han nodding, it quickly handed over its right hand. Zhang Han grabbed its hand and walked to the thunder yang tree. He exerted his spiritual force to his fingers and made his fingernails as sharp as a knife. Then he struck at the chimpanzee's fingertip. Immediately plumes of blood flowed from the chimpanzee's fingertips. Whoa whoa! The chimpanzee's lips twisted and it cried. Its face said I was hurt, but it did not withdraw its hand. Although its consciousness was not high, it knew that the man in front of it saved its life. Zhang Han directly pressed the chimpanzee's hand on the thunder yang tree, and the spiritual force communicated with the thunder yang tree. The thunder yang tree absorbed the chimpanzee's blood, which was gradually assimilated by the thunder yang tree. In the end, the spiritual force transformed into strands of energy and flew to the jade fire dew. After reaching the position of jade fire dew, the energy encircled it, continuously refining jade fire dew. Then, the energy withdrew the dew bit by bit and entering through the chimpanzee's fingers into its body. This energy assimilation and refining could make the chimpanzee absorb jade fire dew very efficiently. If it directly drank the dew like the pure yang water, the jade fire dew would be only half effective. However, in this way, it could at least absorb more than 80% of the dew's energy. Any kind of spiritual herbs, if eaten directly, would waste its energy. Therefore, the ancient immortals came up with a method that not only could keep the energy of spiritual herbs from losing, but also could improve the effect several times. This method was called alchemy. Alchemy was great science. There were many ways to practice it. different people would end up with quite different outcomes even with the same spiritual herbs. Well, that was enough to talk about alchemy. Now, the chimpanzee had absorbed nearly 70% of the jade fire dew. When its body was full and stopped absorbing jade fire dew, the energy that controlled its body also dissipated, and the chimpanzee leaned backward with closed eyes and fell like a zombie. Bang! Its body crashed on the lawn. Ah! Meng Meng was frightened, her big shining eyes full of tension, and she said, "Papa, what's the matter with it? Is it dead?" "No, it's going to sleep. It'll feel refreshed when it wakes up." Zhang Han chuckled and said, "Let's go to the back mountain and let it stay here by itself." "Well, we don't need to look after it." Meng Meng's curious eyes were all over the chimpanzee on the ground. "No." Zhang Han could not help but smile. Meng Meng was too kind after all, but even so, Zhang Han was not going to let Meng Meng see the social phenomena like the last time. All he wanted was to let the little princess grow up smoothly and happily. "Okay, little Hai, we'll go on an expedition." Meng Meng twisted in Zhang Han's arms. When she was put on the ground, she looked at the chimpanzee one last time, and then ran to the pet area with little Hai. Zhang Han picked up agricultural tools and went to wheat areas to grow wheat and some vegetables. During the time of Zhang Han's gardening, the chimpanzee lying on the ground had quietly undergone earth-shaking changes. A layer of glittering and translucent light covered it and surrounded it. At the same time, the inside of its body rang with subtle muffled noises. Boom! If you listened carefully beside it, you would surely find that its body was letting out thunderous sounds. At the same time, its head, neck, arms, legs, and hair were all gradually getting bigger. It was originally 1.4 meters high. Gradually, it expanded to 1.5 meters and 1.6 meters. At the end of the day, it reached a little over 2 meters high. At the same time, its thick arms and legs, its imposing pectoral muscles, and smooth silky hair all revealed its extraordinary physique. At this moment, it rose from the ashes. At that moment, it was reborn. Finally, when Zhang Han finished his work, he was walking back with Meng Meng, and the chimpanzee on the ground suddenly opened its eyes. In its eyes, there was a sharp flash and then it was gone. Putting beside the changes in its body, its bright eyes said that he was still young. It sat up immediately and looked at its own body. Ow! It was startled. With a slight push on the buttocks, it leapt up by more than 5 meters high. Oh! Under its own goofy eyes, it crashed to the ground with a bang, forming a slight dent with his clear body shape. Whoa, whoa, whoa! The chimpanzee was already stunned. It looked at its body, which was 3 times bigger. It didn't know what was going on, but it knew that its strength had increased a lot. Ha ha ha! It stood up and danced happily. At last, it smashed its football-sized fist on its chest. Thump, thump. It sounded like a drum. This scene was seen by Zhang Han, Meng Meng, and little Hai. Meng Meng was also frightened at the scene. She immediately cried out, "Ah, Papa, how did it become so big?" Zhang Han hesitated and solemnly replied, "After a sleep, it has grown so big." Chapter 116, Brother Scorpion. No, you fool me, Papa. Meng Meng snorted softly and said childishly, "It can't grow up so fast after having a sleep." Since Meng Meng slept a lot but didn't grow so big, I'm still small. Meng Meng, while speaking, reached out her small palms to show her height. She was less than 1.2 meters tall. Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry, saying, "Owing to the water it absorbed in sleep. Is it the water that makes people get diarrhea?" Meng Meng said with big eyes blinking, "Yes, and there are a few other things." Zhang Han nodded his head. That's wrong." Meng Meng said doubtfully, "I also drank the water. Why haven't I become bigger, and why didn't it loose bowels after drinking so much?" "Because the impurities in its body come out of the pores," Zhang Han answered, shaking his head. "What's the pore?" "The pore," Zhang Han did not know how to answer this question, as if everyone knew that 1 plus 1 equals 2, but they could not explain why. Fortunately, Zhang Han walked up to the chimpanzee. Before Zhang Han replied, Meng Meng took notice of the chimpanzee. Hey, you were just so small, only to the height of Papa's abdomen, but now you're higher than my Papa. Meng Meng stared at the chimpanzee, unblinking. The chimpanzee came to itself after hearing Meng Meng's words at that time. It turned around and its eyes were mingled with tenderness and gratitude. It stepped forward and came up to Zhang Han. Bang! Chimpanzee's knees fell to the ground and kowtowed to Zhang Han 3 times. After kowtowing, the chimpanzee still knelt on the ground, looking at Zhang Han sincerely. Its right hand turned into a giant fist and pounded on his left chest several times. Then he lowered his head to Zhang Han. Papa, why is it hitting itself? Will it feel sore? Meng Meng said curiously, not knowing what was going on. Zhang Han smiled and said lightly, it is making obeisance to me. It was typical that the strongest became the king in the animal world. Although the chimpanzee was not sure who was the stronger between Zhang Han and itself, it had nothing to repay his kindness of saving its life. Therefore, it was to submit to Zhang Han and gave priority to him at this point, which was like an oath that would never be broken with a lifetime of guardianship. In its waiting and expectation, Zhang Han put his hands out and touched its big head. Whoa, whoa, whoa! The chimpanzee finally raised its head with rejoicing in its eyes, screwed up its lips and cried out. It laughed as cried. Ha ha ha. It lay on the ground dancing like a happy child. The reason why it felt very glad was that it had a home in Mount New Moon after sufferings. Oh, it is good at rolling. Meng Meng looked a little irritable when she saw the chimpanzee rolling on the ground. She did not know why it was so happy. However, Meng Meng was also influenced by its happiness and cheered up, waving her small arms in Zhang Han's arms. Papa, what's its name? Meng Meng wanted to play with it but did not know its name, so she asked Zhang Han. Its name? Zhang Han thought for a while the chimpanzee sat up immediately after hearing what Meng Meng said. Its eyeballs went round, seeming to be thinking about its name. Well, its hair is black and Little Hi's is also black. They are both black, so let's call it Little Hi. No, it's Little Hi's name. Then what is it called? Dai. Meng Meng muttered while thinking and called it Dai eventually. Okay, its name is Dai then. Zhang Han said, smiling. This triggered a silvery laugh of Meng Meng. She thought she was great to call it Dai. While Zhang Han's face was illumined with an expression of satisfaction when he saw Meng Meng's smile. Regardless of its name was Dai or Old Hai, it was enough to make Meng Meng smile. While the chimpanzee soon accepted its name, it puckered its lips, pointed to Little Hai and itself with his palms, then it clenched its fists and hit each other several times. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Its expression and manner seemed to say to Little Hai, we are brothers. It clearly remembered that when it was dying, Little Hai gave it 2 chickens. Little help brought much return, which embodied the very spirit in the animal world. Ow! Little Hai also pouted and shouted at the chimpanzee. Little Hai welcomed the brother coming into the territory. He was bored to take those 30 puppies to play all day. Great! Under the leadership of the host, there came another friend with a high IQ. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Dai's eyes fixed on the little princess. It was clear that getting this was all because of this kind little princess. Dai, therefore, half knelt on the ground and stretched its arms to Meng Meng. Ha ha, here I come. Meng Meng wriggled in Zhang Han's arms and wanted to play on Dai's hand. Dai had a height of 2 meters, whose arms and palms were much larger than those of the ordinary people. Dai held Meng Meng carefully after she was sent onto its palm by Zhang Han. Meng Meng slowly shook a few times in its palm, like playing on a swing. Then, Dai tossed Meng Meng up gently. Meng Meng let out a cry and was caught by Dai when she fell down. It then repeatedly tossed up and caught her. Meng Meng's fear at the beginning gradually turned into laughter. She had a great time. Meng Meng played for half an hour, while Zhang Han took advantage of this period of time to catch 4 chickens and took some ingredients. Then he stopped Meng Meng and went downhill with her. On the other side, after Zhao Feng left Mount New Moon, he hurried back New Moon Bay, parked his car in the corporation's branch and went upstairs. His temporary residence was on the 17th floor of the hotel belonging to his company, which was a luxury suite. A circular hall was in sight when he came to the 17th floor. There were 4 luxury suites as well as a corridor on the opposite side. At the end of the corridor on the left, there stood about 30 people. From afar, he saw some of them were beaten on both sides of the corridor. Zhao Feng's face fell and walked over to them. On the side of the corridor, a man dressed in a black suit rushed to Zhao Feng after seeing him. His eyes were filled with anger and he said, "Brother Feng, Scorpion came and insisted on breaking into your room and saying that he had something to check. We refused him, then fought with him. As a result, our brothers suffered losses." Zhao Feng nodded solemnly. Scorpion was a capable assistant of Tang Zan and had been following Tang Zan for 5 or 6 years and was fast in his movements. People say he was once a mercenary overseas. Before Zhao Feng came, Tang Zan had 7 powerful men, among whom 3 were well versed in civil virtues while the other 4 were endowed with martial arts. 3 people were intellectual-type criminals. 1 was in charge of pornography of KTVs in Southern District. 1 was responsible for gambling and the other was the cleverest among the 3, who was in his 40s and once a brilliant student studying abroad. He took charge of the most complex drug abuse and made plans for purchasing routes, calculating the risk and so on. The 4 who were adept with martial arts were truly remarkable and had strong backgrounds. Scorpion was the most ferocious person among them. He would never leave his opponent alive. His cruel level was even higher than Zhao Feng's. Zhao Feng's cruel-bearing madness, while Scorpion was atrocious, he was even more horrifying among the underground forces. Brother Feng. People who could stand here were all Zhao Feng's men. They gathered together and greeted Zhao Feng after they saw him. Zhao Feng nodded his head and walked into the room with vigorous strides. However, just arrived at the door, there stood 2 men of great statures who crossed their arms and said haughtily, "Sorry, Brother Scorpion is working inside. No other people are allowed in." The door of the room was open. He could see clearly that Scorpion was sitting leisurely in a chair. Scorpion glanced at Zhao Feng coldly with a sneer in his eyes obviously. Seeing this, a smile climbed up on his face. All of a sudden, he reached out his hands, grabbed the heads of the 2 men at a fast speed and smashed them on the marble wall on the back side. Bang bang. As 2 dull thuds, the 2 tall and sturdy thugs fell to the ground with their heads bleeding. Zhao Feng came in with a cold expression. "You're so furious." Scorpion stood up and hissed, saying, he was the man with a scorpion tattoo on his neck who had kept watching on Zhao Feng outside Zhang Han's restaurant. About a dozen people were rummaging through things at random in the room, making the whole room a mess. "Gosh, stop." After Zhao Feng came in, his men rushed in and shouted angrily at those who were turning things over. The dozen people stopped at that time, gathered together behind Scorpion, glaring at Zhao Feng and his men. This also made the atmosphere on the court tense at that time. "Do you think about the consequences of rummaging through my room without my permission?" Zhao Feng was calm, but his eyes were shining with a cold. "Your room?" Scorpion sneered and said, "Sorry, this company belongs to Lord Ang, so does this room. Why can't I come?" While speaking, Scorpion stared at Zhao Feng coldly, as if to see something in his eyes, while Zhao Feng calmed down and kept thinking at the same time. He should have been sent by Tang Zan. What's his purpose, to probe? No, it can almost turn nasty. There must be some reasons. Does she really know some Tang Zan's secrets? What I get threatens him. Chapter 117, They were well matched in strength. Zhao Feng pondered and did not figure out the reason. After all, he did not get any evidence about Tang Zan. But, In the face of Scorpion's provocation, Zhao Feng's eyes were completely filled with cruelty. Zhao Feng, I don't care who you were, in Forever Harmony Association, however, whether you are a dragon or a tiger, you'd better keep your nose clean. Do you really think you are the first of experts of the club? I tell you, as long as I, Scorpion, is here, you'll never be in the top position. Scorpion sneered and taunted. Oh? Do you want to try? Zhao Feng lifted his eyebrows, staring at Scorpion chillily. Do you think you are qualified? Scorpion put on a false smile and said. In an instant, Zhao Feng's and Scorpion's men stepped back. They all felt that their masters were going to fight with each other. As expected, Zhao Feng's right hand moved at the next moment. His palm turned into a fist, heading for Scorpion's face with an overwhelming momentum. Scorpion's eyes flashed with a beam of cold light. Moreover, he was extremely calm, turning his head to the left side and succeeding in evading the fist. However, Zhao Feng's fist came in an arc and hit Scorpion in the face side on. Scorpion squatted down quickly and punched Zhao Feng in the chest with a hook at the same time. Scorpion used all his strength. If someone was hit, it was estimated that he would faint in an instant. However, Zhao Feng was not a pushover after all. He retreated half a step and his left hand clenched aimed at his fist simultaneously. A head-to-head battle? A cold glint came into Scorpion's eyes and he added his strength. Bang! With a dull thud, Zhao Feng took 2 steps backward while Scorpion stepped backward 2.5 paces. This move gave a slight edge to Zhao Feng. The two looked at each other, and then their bodies rushed to each other again. They fought with hands and knees in this room. Scorpion was indeed something. In the first 3 minutes, he and Zhao Feng were so well matched, engaged in an all-out fight. But Zhao Feng's fist became more and more sharp gradually. He used shrewd moves, which made Scorpion feel fatigued and retreat. This also made Scorpion feel appalled. He had fought against Zhao Feng once a few months ago and gained the upper hand at that time. Did he hide his strength? Scorpion continually retreated. How shameful he was, for he was overtaken by Zhao Feng in public. Consequently, Scorpion eyes flashed a hint of maliciousness. He brewed a full-body counterattack and made a series of deadly moves, which delayed Zhao Feng's first round of offensive. Scorpion made a determined effort and attacked head-on, drawing Zhao Feng back. This battle between the two totally shocked their men, who shook their heads and marveled. You're indeed Brother Scorpion, whose moves are swift and fierce. Brother Scorpion is the first of experts in the association. But the madman is also quite fierce and he draw equal with Brother Scorpion. While on the other side, Zhao Feng's men also marveled. Brother Feng is as formidable as always. This is a battle between superior players, but Scorpion is so vicious. Who is not as magnanimous as Brother Feng? That's right. Although Brother Feng is ruthless, he's a man of strong principles. All eyes were fixed on the two men who were fighting, but they whispered. Zhao Feng's and Scorpion's factions had always been hostile to each other. As a matter of fact, not only Zhao Feng's faction, but many other people in the association also hated Scorpion's faction, because they committed all kinds of atrocities and done things without any bottom line. But on account of the benefits they brought to the association by their extreme methods, Tang Zhan allowed Scorpion to develop freely. The two people were fighting in full swing on the spot. They had consumed most of their strength in the violent battle after a few minutes. Gradually, Scorpion felt a little exhausted, while Zhao Feng's strength was still mighty. A thrill went through him spontaneously. He clearly remembered Zhao Feng's and his continuous fighting capacity were about the same in the last fight. Even Zhao Feng was weaker than himself. How his strength became so mighty this time? Scorpion knew that if he continued to fight in this way, he would definitely be defeated. So taking advantage of the time when Zhao Feng swept across his legs, Scorpion's hand touched his lower back secretly. His left shoulder abruptly resisted Zhao Feng's blow. Bang! Scorpion took 2 steps backward side on, while Zhao Feng continued to attack, hitting Scorpion in the chest with one punch. However, At this point, Scorpion's right hand faced upward, with a cold light shining in his hand. Zhao Feng's pupils contracted and quickly took his fist back, but it was somewhat late after all. Swish. Zhao Feng only felt the back of his hand cold, and blood flowed out. He just saw that Scorpion's right hand was holding an awl, whose tip was gleaming with a cold light. Damn it, use the weapon? A man with short yellow hair behind Zhao Feng glared at Scorpion. He looked at him with great anger and took out a pistol from his lower back, pointing at Scorpion. Scorpion was not afraid confronted with a gun, slightly narrowing his eyes and looking at the man. His men were not afraid of getting into trouble, for he did not commit himself, some of whom also pulled out the gun from their lower backs, pointed at the man with yellow hair and growled, "Shit, put it down. Damn it, who are you scolding? Believe it or not, I'll kill you." Seeing them with guns, other Zhao Feng's confidants also took out their guns one after another, pointing at and glaring at them. The atmosphere became tense all of a sudden. If anyone who dared to shoot at first, then there would be a slaughter. "Mudman, why aren't in charge of your dogs?" Scorpion sneered and said, "Today." Zhao Feng casually took the bandage handed over by his staff, bandaged his palm simply and said faintly, "If you don't give me an explanation, then stay." His insipid words made people feel cold. No one doubted that if Scorpion did not explain, a battle would indeed be started. An explanation? Ha, 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 well, then I'll tell you. Scorpion calmed down and stared at Zhao Feng, saying, "Everyone knows what happened to Xiaoyu, right? She stole Lord Tang's things and now Lord Tang wants to investigate. I'm responsible for this matter, and you are Xiaoyu's closest friend, right? You think, is there any reason for me to come and check? Oh, have you finished the investigation?" Zhao Feng stayed calm, pondering more things. Xiaoyu took Tang Zan's stuff. She was bound to inform him if she took something, but she did not. Was it because she did not have a chance, or did she not take them at all? Did Tang Zan discover something, and what did he want to probe since he specially sent Scorpion to check, or he just did it for others to see? Zhao Feng had a headache thinking about it. Tang Zan not only had 3 strategists, but he was also a man with high intelligence quotient. Zhao Feng, therefore, truly felt that he had a long way to go before he could beat him, and he also did not know if he could finish the task alone. Scorpion sneered hearing what he said. He took 2 steps forward, patted Zhao Feng on the shoulder and whispered in his ear, "Zhao Feng, Lord Tang knows very well the relationship between you and Xiaoyu. The reason why he haven't taken action is just because you are more valuable than Xiaoyu, but I warn you, I don't care what purpose you have, I'll keep an eye on you. If you once give the show away, you'll be more than injured. I think you know what I mean, ha ha ha." In the end, Scorpion chuckled and his laughter made others feel cold. "I don't understand what a dog wants to convey," Zhao Feng said coldly. "Now that you have finished, get out of my room. Scorpion's eyes flashed a beam of cold light. He looked at Zhao Feng with a meaningful smile and stepped toward the door. After a few steps, he stopped and said without looking back, "Oh, by the way, I have to remind that as a senior member of an association, you really degrade yourself to go to a small restaurant to help." Having finished speaking, Scorpion walked out of the door without looking back. His men glared at Zhao Feng's men and hurried away. "Brother Feng, that's going too far." The man with short yellow hair came forward and said angrily, "It's obvious that Lord Tang dislikes you, Brother Feng." "That's right, does Tang Zan suppress Brother Feng for he emerged too quickly?" "Well, Scorpion followed Tang Zan at the beginning, while we came halfway, we're not his true sons. Can we be treated as same as Scorpion? I think it's better for us to set up our organization. It's so humbling to follow them, Brother Feng, or else." One of the curly-haired men said sincerely. He deemed he was only Brother Feng's man. It was better to set up a new organization than to be bullied in this association. His words motivated others. Brother Feng was more loyal and reasonable and was good to his men, but Tang Zan was not. He was a thorough, fierce and powerful person, making them feel really scrupulous. Zhao Feng raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't shoot off your mouth and don't think too much. All right, just go out." After saying this, he silently walked into the study, stood by the window and looked at the scenery of New Moon Bay, but he was thinking about one thing. He had not expected the restaurant was involved in this matter. He did go there too frequently recently and was afraid that Tang Zhan had noticed the restaurant, for he was busy working as a waiter. He was afraid he could not go there frequently in the future. Although the boss was formidable, he could not get the boss into trouble. Zhao Feng sighed deeply. Back to Mount New Moon, after Zhang Han left with Meng Meng in his arms, Dai and Little Hai started to fight. Dai had great power, but it only used 10%, while Little Hai's teeth were extremely sharp, but it would not really bite down. This kind of fighting was equivalent to playing games, which scared and stunned more than 30 dogs nearby. Chapter 118, Woe-Bitted Chickens. Little Hai was their eldest brother, after all. They were of the same kind. However, their eldest brother was slapped easily by the giant chimpanzee. Then it got up, rushed up at a great speed and was slapped again and again. While Dai found it interesting, grinning widely. Gradually, Little Hai became wiser. It ran around Dai at a high speed. Although Dai had great strength, it was clumsy in Little Hai's view. Dai fought for a while but could not touch Little Hai's ass, so he sat down on the ground. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Dai crooned, waving its arms, as if to say, "It's boring, I don't want to keep fighting," while Little Hai stopped and sat in front of Dai, swinging its big tongue. "Whoa." All of a sudden, Dai slinkingly looked at the chickens on the opposite side. Its mouth opened up gradually and it was ready to pounce on them. When Little Hai saw its saliva was to flow out, it barked warily. "Ow woo, ow woo. Whoa, whoa, whoa." Dai made a wry mouth, giving a sign to Little Hai that it was desired to eat chicken. "Ow, ow." Little Hai shook its head at once and moved its front paws from side to side, which meant that they could not eat any more, for the owner had found out the truth. After figuring out what it said, Dai beat its breast in anguish. "Whoa, whoa." Dai kept gesticulating with its hands, which meant that with so many chickens, it didn't matter to eat some more. "Ow." Little Hai looked at the chickens and deemed that it was right after consideration. Since there were large quantities of chickens, it did not matter to steal too. Little Hai, therefore, nodded to Dai. "Hum hum." Dai laughed, stretching out its enormous fist in front of Little Hai's head. After a pause, Little Hai reached out its claw to the fist. Suddenly, the two brothers sneaked to the chickens. Because of Dai's large size, chickens were all in a mess when they came close. "Ow woo." Little Hai let out a cry to Dai in a low voice. Its head leaned aside and motioned for it to stand aside. "Whoa." Dai stepped aside. At this time, Little Hai moved. Whoosh. Little Hai came running with a chicken in its mouth after a few seconds and placed it in front of Dai. Then it ran to the chickens again. Whoosh. A few seconds later, another chicken was caught. Little Hai was somewhat complacent at this point. Although Dai had awesome strength, it was still awkward. "Ow, ow." Little Hai shook its head and headed for the dense forest, picking up a chicken. "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Dai promptly stopped Little Hai and expressed its meaning by gesticulating with big palms. "Whoa, ow." Having gesticulated for a long time, Little Hai finally understood what Dai meant. It was seeking for a lighter to roast chickens. After pondering for a moment, Little Hai barked to Dai and gave it an expression of waiting, turning to run. Where was it going? To find a way to get a lighter outside. Little Hai quickly ran out of Mount New Moon and towards New Moon Bay. A few minutes later, it saw a group of people who were having a picnic on a lush grass at the foot of the adjacent low mountain. There were 6 people in all, with 3 cars nearby and a large barbecue grill beside, which was surrounded by a folding table and 6 plastic chairs. These 6 people, 3 of whom were males, were all with their girlfriends. One of them was having a barbecue nearby while the others were drinking beer, eating and chatting. Little Hai ran over here just because it saw the smoke. As Little Hai approached, a plump man who was in charge of barbecuing discovered it first. When he saw the big and powerful dog, his eyes suddenly widened and all the freshly baked kebabs in his hands fell to the ground. "Hey, hey, hey," he whispered to his companions behind him with his face changing greatly. When the other 5 persons looked over, 3 women among them turned pale and almost screamed out. "Don't cry, don't panic, calm down," emaciated men said in a low voice and swallowed at the same time. Obviously, he was also very nervous. It was normal for anyone to shudder with fear when he saw a dog as big as a bear. "Everybody, get up quickly and move back slowly, don't run, slow down, it probably means no harm, let's slow down." The thin man got up and reminded others simultaneously. With a conductor, others seemed to have a tower of strength. They all stood up and retreated slowly, looking at Little Hai with great vigilance. These 3 men did have responsibility. They were all in front of their girlfriends in the face of this dangerous situation. Little Hai walked forward calmly under their gazes. When he reached the table, these people were thrown into panic. However, to their surprise, Little Hai picked up the 2 lighters on the table directly in its mouth, glanced at them and then left quickly. "Who?" The crowd exhaled a long breath deeply. The plump man wiped his sweat away and said with fear, "It's really frightening. Fortunately, it's not hostile, or we may be bitten." "That's right. What kind of dog is it? Why is it so big?" "It looks like a black and tan dog, but its size is so amazing, isn't it? Number. How can a rural dog be so giant? Judging from its appearance, it may be fiercer than a wolf." They vied with each other. Perhaps they would never forget this scene. Many years later, they might remember that they met a big majestic dog during a picnic on a certain day. Little Hai held the 2 lighters in its mouth, running quickly with 4 legs, and soon returned to Mount New Moon. When Dai saw the lighters in Little Hai's mouth, hum. Dai patted itself on the leg a few times and gave Little Hai a thumbs up sign. "Ow ow." Little Hai responded drawlingly, as if to say that it was a cinch. So the 2 brothers sneaked into the thick forest. Dai set up a support with some branches behind the stone they first met. Recalling the way the people who grabbed it barbecued, it set up several brackets and bunched the chickens and roasted them. A few moments later, when the chickens were cooked, the smell made their mouths water. So the 2 started their own dinner. Seconds later, on the edge of the thick forest, Little Hai's mouth was full of oil. It rolled eyes and rushed into the flock again and went back with 2 chickens in its mouth. The animals shuddered with fear at this time, as if there were some wild animals in the dense forest. However, there were indeed 2 wild animals, which were especially fond of eating meat. When the 2 brothers were enjoying their meat meal, on the other side, in Zhang Han's restaurant, since Xian called in advance, saying she had to work overtime at night and would come later, Zhang Han postponed their dinner time. Today was a very nice day for members. "Wow, 2 chickens, that's great. The boss is so kind, I love you so much." Liang Mengkai and Yu Qingqing stood in front of the bar with expectation and aspiration. Fortunately, Meng was playing with Zhang Li on the 2nd floor at this point. Otherwise, if the little princess heard these words, she might be dissatisfied with Liang Mengkai. "I can eat drumsticks today, how happy I am." After Zhang Han chopped the 2 chickens into pieces, Yu Qingqing stared at a big drumstick with her eyes twinkling and said. However, as soon as she stopped speaking, Zhang Han lightly placed the drumsticks in a small basin on the back. "No, leave me one." After seeing Zhang Han take another drumstick, Yu Qingqing said sadly. Zhang Han, however, just ignored her and put out his hand to the 2 wings in chops. "Boss, brother, I want to eat chicken wings." Liang Mengkai was startled and said quickly, "Leave me one, please." At last, a few seconds later, the 2 ladies looked at Zhang Han with hidden bitterness in their eyes. Their expressions were so intoxicating that others' hearts would be definitely softened if they saw them. but Zhang Han turned a blind eye and was busy doing his own things. "Papa, why don't you come up to play with Meng Meng?" Meng Meng's small body appeared in the corner of the stairs at this time. She blinked her big limpid eyes and said to Zhang Han in a disgruntled tone, "I'll come in a few minutes." Zhang Han responded, then set up a frying pan, put oil, poured the chops into it and began to stir fry. When caught sight of Meng Meng, Liang Mengkai's eyes brightened. She said kindly, "Extremely beautiful little Princess Meng Meng, can I ask you a favor?" "Well, what is it?" Meng Meng asked curiously. Liang Mengkai was a little coy and embarrassed, but for the sake of the chicken wings she had been dying for a long time, she signed herself over. She whispered, "I want to eat a chicken wing, but your papa refused to give me and said it was left to you, so." "What? So can you give me a chicken wing? Just one?" Liang Mengkai's face became slight red. It was common that children asked adults for gifts, why the phenomenon became converse in this restaurant. However, she was cornered. Cola chicken wings was one of her favorite dishes. She liked chicken wings very much, especially after eating chicken made by Zhang Han. She could not bear the temptation of delicious chicken wings. Meng Meng, after hearing what she said, thought for a while and said to Zhang Han in a childish tone, "Well, Papa, then, give the little sister a small piece." "Okay." Zhang Han looked at Liang Mengkai with a smile and shook his head, taking a chicken wing and throwing it into the pot. For Liang Mengkai, Meng Meng was like an angel at this point. "Thank you, Meng Meng, it's very kind of you, I love you so much," Liang Mengkai said, smiling. "Ahem, Meng Meng, I want to eat a drumstick." Yu Qingqing whispered. Papa." Meng Meng waved her small hand casually like Zhang Han, saying, "Then also give a drumstick to this sister." Zhang Han took a drumstick once again and threw it into the pan. With Yu Qingqing's appreciation, Meng Meng walked back to the second floor step by step. Chapter 119, Response of the New Song. At this time, every member present showed a greedy face like a hungry wolf. Although they also wanted to eat those delicious parts, they were too proud to ask Meng Meng. Besides, they were very surprised to get access to chicken. Since Zhaofeng, Wang and his wife did not come for dinner, the rest of the people were able to enjoy themselves and everyone was given a lot of chicken. Egg fried rice and noodle soup were still sold fast. After the new noodle soup blockbuster, the number of members in this restaurant had also increased steadily. These days, the drawer of the computer counter had been filled with money, so Zhang Han gave most of it to Zhang Li as pocket money at will. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, Xian and Zuf arrived when Zhang Han had already prepared the food. "Wow, it smells good, that's great, brother-in-law. Do you know elder sister Yan and I didn't eat at noon, now we're so hungry." Zuf deftly picked up a piece of chicken and chewed it. "Why didn't you eat?" Zhang Han glanced at Xian, asking casually. "It's all your fault." Xian snorted, giving him an angry stare, and said, "The dishes you cooked were so delicious that made me become fastidious. It's all your fault. The food in the company was too hard to swallow. As a result, I ate nothing and was hungry till now." While speaking, Xian's tone inevitably contained some grievances. Others' boyfriends, seeing their girlfriends toil, would deliver meals or pick them for dinner in person, but this guy never paid attention to this respect. Even if he was Meng Meng's father, he did not know how to take care of others at all. "Then you can come back for lunch afterwards." Zhang Han shook his head slightly and said, "I've been very busy recently, it takes 2 hours back and forth, so I don't have time to go back." Xian finished eating a piece of chicken, pouted and glanced at Zhang Han with beautiful eyes secretly. "So?" Zhang Han drew out the first word as if he was pondering how to say it. Xian's big eyes brightened at this point, filled with expectations. It was happy to imagine. "So stop messing about," Zhang Han said coldly and then had dinner quietly. Xian froze up, looking at Zhang Han with her eyes unblinking. She had never expected what he said, so she snorted angrily, casting a stern glance at Zhang Han, only ate out of spite. Zhang Li, who had been observing secretly, gave a meaningful smile while enjoying the delicious food. A woman knew a lot about women. She understood that they would become a family soon, for Xian wore such look, which augured well. But, why did brother become as dumb as a post? He should have said he would send Xian a packed lunch every day at the moment. How foolish of he. In that case, Xian would be with him sooner or later. Where to find such a good sister-in-law? What a fool. After several meetings, Zhang Li did think highly of Xian. She was extremely good-looking and had the right disposition, who was absolutely a match for her brother. It was the taste of life. Zhang Han was not anxious while Zhang Li was worried. The dinner ended in a happy atmosphere. It was already over 9 o'clock after the meal. Xian planned to go to Union Garden as she did yesterday and came to the restaurant early the next day. While Zhang Li and Zif were clearing the table, Zhang Han sat beside Xian and said, "Why don't you stay here at night? It was inconvenient not only for you but also for Meng Meng if you make the round trip every day." Meng Meng ignored what Zhang Han said, playing with toys, for she, as long as Papa and Mama could accompany her, it did not matter where they were. While Xian snorted softly, "No," but she kept thinking though she refused. Zhang Han, "You wanted me to come to live here without sending me a meal, nice try." Zhang Han shook his head slightly seeing this and said no more. In fact, it was not a big deal to say that making round trips was inconvenient. It just took more than half an hour to drive in the morning and evening. After Zif and Zhang Li cleaned up, they left the restaurant. They were speechless all night. Early in the morning the next day, they gathered in the restaurant again and had breakfast. Xian went to work, while Zhang Han took Meng Meng to Mount New Moon to play. Meng Meng was concerned about Dai. A big friend came, which meant she had another playmate. Furthermore, Dai could play the interesting game to throw Meng Meng about. Not to mention they enjoyed playing on this side. On this day, just after midnight, Xuanhuan's microblog, which had not sent a message for a long time, eventually updated. The brand new actress was quietly released. At night, many people who surfed the internet and paid attention to Xuanhuan simultaneously, found the song shortly after the news was released. In an internet bar, a college couple were surfing the internet and the innocent horsetail girl was watching the TV play while casually browsing the microblog. A new song? When she saw Xuanhuan's announcement, she clicked in it with curiosity, suspending the popular TV play she had watched before and played the song. A piano prelude sounded, followed by a deep and fair-sounding voice. Simply, "Let's speak in simple terms. Please ignore the temperamental state of mind. You aren't an actress. Don't make up any of those plots." The girl's eyes were imbued with from curiosity to surprise and finally to intoxication. "Hey, listen to this song." The girl could not help sharing the song with her boyfriend after listening to it. "I'm still playing games, just listen to it by yourself. Listen to this song. Please, it's really melodious." On the girl's insistence, her boyfriend said helplessly, Okay, put on the headset for me." Hence the girl put the headset on her boyfriend and played the song. Her boyfriend listened to the song with rejection at the beginning, but when he heard the prelude, the first verse and the compact part, he gradually lost his mind. Even his hands left the keyboard, and he gave up his computer game. "What song is this?" After listening, her boyfriend looked at the girl in surprise. Does it sound great?" "Yes, please tell me what song it is." "It's a new song from Xuanhuan, called Actress." So the boyfriend could not wait to switch the game interface and played it again. After finishing listening, he quickly looked up and yelled at several roommates, "Brothers, I found a great song called Actress. You should also listen to it." A few minutes later, the internet bar's song ordering system played this music, making the people in all attracted by the song and began to search for its name. It was really simple to listen to the song and shared with others. Not only in the internet bar, but also in people's home, dormitories of universities and many other places. This song was discovered by them and fascinated them. This song, like a hurricane, had been sweeping the network until over 9 o'clock in the next morning. Although not all the people were listening to this song, but it would be played several times in the internet bars, restaurants, leisure clubs, cafes and other places. This deep and charming song roused people's tender emotions, which spread rapidly from mouth to mouth. It took only half a day to become popular. Of course, its success also attributed to Xuanhuan's tremendous popularity. In the meantime, multifarious comments were out. It sounds great and affectionate, striking a chord in my heart. The lyrics are excellent, carrying me back. It's a very pleasant song, giving people deep feelings. Life is a performance that will never fall down. Each of us is an actor, but some people obey themselves, while others try to please the audience. One should walk step by step and throw rubbish bit by bit. Life is not easy at all. You don't need to be eager for others' understanding and approval. Just live your own life quietly. If your heart couldn't be shaken, the wind will do nothing. I just want to find a boyfriend who is not an actor. The actress sounds so great because it depicted the most real, most unbearable and most innocent side of love. In addition to the comments of ordinary netizens, this song had caused strong responses in various music studios and media companies. At this time in Royal Entertainment Company, dozens of artists such as Zhan, Zif, Xuanhuan and a few specified songwriters were all sitting in the conference room to have a meeting. Maki was talking about the following development policy on the front side. Suddenly a young man knocked at the door and came in. He walked to Maki's side and leaned down to say a few words softly in her ear. Maki nodded and let him out. I've just heard a news that Xuanhuan released a microblog after the midnight and he will release 3 new songs in the concert on the 15th this month. He'll release the songs on the internet today, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. The first one has come out and received good repercussion. Let's listen to it first. Maki controlled the projector system while speaking. She searched for the song and played it. A simple and fair-sounding prelude came out, followed by the deep voice. Simply, let's speak in simple terms. Please ignore the temperamental state of mind. The people in the meeting room was indifferent at the beginning, then fully surprised and finally serious and dignified. Even the songwriters had closed their eyes and listened carefully. After the song was played, all the people were in silence. Can you play it again? One of the songwriters said in a deep tone. Maki nodded and played it again. After listening to it 3 times, the people in the conference room looked at each other and all saw a bit of horror in each other's eyes. This song is highly as the cream of good songs. In the end, the most qualified songwriter in the company firmly decided to comment. Yes, this song has several quintessence. Another songwriter shook his head repeatedly and sighed. The first is the promotion of emotions, the second is the control of the timbre connection between the main song and the chorus, the third is the change of treble, bass and semi-falsetto, and the fourth is that the lyrics are very artistic. In general, it's a fine product. Oh, it's really a good song. Maki's countenance suddenly fell and she said, have you noticed the songwriter of this song? Chapter 120, Han Yang. Han Yang. Maki's tone became somewhat sharp. She scanned the whole room and said, an unknown junior can write such a quintessential song. What about you? How many fine works have been written by you this year? Last year you wrote 20 excellent songs, but this year, you just wrote less than 10 songs in the major part of this year. Is this because you slack off in work or because your inspiration has dried up? Maki's words made all the songwriters present drop their heads helplessly. Some of senior songwriters retorted angrily, you're wrong. If high-quality songs can be produced on a large scale, why do you still need us? That's right, we have never been idle in the company. Directum, you know the difficulty of making fine songs. We really tried our best, But this kind of songs is still uncommon. The instant they spoke, Maki softened her position slightly. She could not do anything with them on account of their backgrounds. Those words only warned others. So Maki sighed softly and said, I know, I'm just a little anxious to see that a person can write such a good song. This remark made other songwriters active. Elder system, Han Yang is just like winning the lottery. It's reasonable for him to write a good song occasionally. That's right, every songwriter present has more than 3 masterpieces. Furthermore, no one has heard of Han Yang before and nobody knows where he comes from. Ho ho, I've seen so many songwriters like him. Each of them wrote a relatively great song by accident, gaining popularity. The next song, however, will expose their weaknesses. We all concentrate on qualification. A songwriter without 3 high-quality songs isn't a true songwriter, and one can't be called senior songwriter without 10 masterpieces. Directum, it's just a song written by a nobody. You'd better not take it for granted. The crowd chatted for a while. What they said did reveal their bitterness and showed their seniority, inevitably mixed with some sarcastic remarks about Han Yang in the meantime. All right, let's stop this topic. Since everyone is so confident, I am waiting for your excellent songs. Maki clapped her hands and smiled, saying, let's talk about a few recent events. First, Xuanhuan's album is ready. She'll participate in a commercial performance in the harbor city in Eastern tomorrow and launch a press conference the day after tomorrow. This album will be on sale on the 15th. I wish you all a success. While speaking, Maki smiled. She took the lead and clapped her hands, making the people burst into thunderous applause. Maki scanned the whole room, and suddenly she saw Xian, who was indifferent, and Zuf, who was seemingly defiant. Deep in her eyes flashed a sneer and she said, oh, by the way, it seems that Xian's album is almost ready as well. There will be a commercial performance in Victoria Harbour tomorrow and a press conference the day after tomorrow. Her album will be on sale on the 15th. I also hope that Xian's album can sell well. Maki also take the lead to clap after finishing speaking, but this time she clapped slowly and did not seem to mind. Moreover, the applause was nearly halved, which was thin to the point of non-existence. Xuanhuan leaked a mocking smile seeing this. It seemed that people in the company were all perceptive. They knew she, Xuanhuan, was the one that the company intended to make great efforts to cultivate, while Xian, ho ho, she sneered inwardly, staring straight at Xian with provocation. Xian ignored, but Zuf was going to explode soon. Especially when she heard others' whispers, like a washed-up star, and aren't these two comparable with each other? Xuanhuan must win. A series of comments made Zuf's face sink down. Seeing Zuf's expression, Maki smiled faintly and clapped her hands. All right, today's meeting is over, let's go to work. After the meeting, people left in succession. In front of the conference room, Xian, you're really courageous. Xuanhuan gave out a false smile and said, don't you get yourself into trouble that you release your album on the same day as me? Trouble? Xian's expression was glacial as always. She cast her eyes on Xuanhuan and replied coldly, I don't think so. Having finished her words, Xian took the lead to her office. Zif mercilessly glared at Xuanhuan, saying dismissively, don't you know how you get the resources? Even left no chance for Xuanhuan and other people to refute. She strode out directly. You. Xuanhuan choked with anger. Although people almost knew that she was Li Cheng's toy, no one would taunt her face to face. After all, hidden rules were everywhere and people were used to them. It was her manager who laughed scornfully and shouted, I indeed don't know where you get the confidence as a washed-up star. After hearing what she said, Xian, not far ahead, froze with anger in her eyes, but she didn't say anything at last but left coldly. The pressure of work and those sarcastic words exhausted Xian both physically and mentally. She was desired to have a rest, leaving the life of intrigue. However, she could not. The obsession in her heart kept her going. Even when returning to the restaurant for dinner at night, Xian smiled less than usual. The album was about to be released. In these days, Xian seemed to be under more and more pressure. At 9 o'clock in the next morning, still in the conference room of Royal Entertainment Company, there were more people at the conference room than yesterday. Just like yesterday, they were sitting in chairs quietly listening to a song. Now our relationship is ambiguous anyway, so you don't have to feel embarrassed to find a match. People who have paid line up to discuss on experience. After the song was played several times, Makey turned off the music. It's another masterpiece. This song called Ambiguity was still written by the person named Han Yang. How do you feel after listening? Makey said slowly. Why it's the pick of songs again. A senior songwriter said doubtfully, did he wrote this before? I think so. It seems that the person is somewhat talented, for he produced 2 masterpieces. The 2 masterpieces, however, don't mean anything. Maybe he wrote hundreds of songs and picked out 2 of them. I think so. However, on the 3rd day, namely on the 14th, at 9 o'clock in the morning, there were more people in the conference room, including all the songwriters in the company. Like the waves crashed into the hills. How long can you hold on? He may only praise you and then return. How long can the delicate and charming flowers last before you come? Or was broken by the poet and sad to change the song. It's another fine song. Makey was solemn, frowning slightly and saying, there appeared 3 masterpieces in 3 days. I can imagine how popular his concert will be tomorrow. In the meantime, Xuanhuan's song will be released, as a song of the same period. Being defeated by others also shows the company has no strength. Do you understand? What can we do? We're also very desperate. Exactly. Han Yang must be another name of a famous songwriter. Otherwise, how could it be possible for him to produce 3 songs of such high quality? Yes, all of the masterpieces were created with painstaking effort. These 3 songs have definitely been polished for a long time. Enough. Makey thumped on the table, frowned and said, I give you another month. If you can't create songs of the same grade, you know what the consequence is. Moreover, Makey scanned the songwriters present and said slowly, I've already communicated with top executives about this matter. They only said that our company doesn't feed idle persons. I think you understand what it means. Today's meeting is over. Many songwriters went out, sighing. It was acknowledged that it was difficult to produce fine songs. A good song not only depended on its quality, but also was related to market's direction and fortune. Who could create songs of the same grade as those 3 songs within a month? The meetings in these 3 days let all the people in the company talk about this matter. Have you heard the 3 really nice songs sung by Qian? I've heard them many times, which let me cycle them. Cool. Do you know, since these 3 songs were all written by a person named Han Yang, elder sister Makey held 3 meetings in 3 consecutive days. She was angry and upbraided the company's songwriters. Not only the ordinary employees of the company talked about it, but other singers were affected by it. In Xian's office, elder sister Yan, I find those 3 songs' views and comments has surpassed many previous popular songs. As a song of the same period, I think we'll be greatly affected. Zif said with a sigh, nothing can match. Xian nodded with deep agreement. The level of the songs even convinced Xian. However, Xuanhuan is more affected. The company gives her so many resources, but nobody expected that a talented songwriter appeared. The effect of her songs will be much less under the comparison, so we have an opportunity to surpass her. Zif thought for a while with a flash of excitement on her face. Xian gently nodded. She had 2 goals of this album. One was let her former fans see the news that Xian returned. The other was to defeat Xuanhuan, whose mocking was vivid in her mind. Well, I don't know who's Han Yang. He's really talented. Zif shook her head, glanced at the clock and said, elder sister Yan, we have to prepare for the press conference. Okay. Xian nodded and walked out of the office with Zif. On the other side, Zhang Han and Meng were watching cartoons on the first floor of the restaurant. which gave the place a wonderfully homely character. But at this time, two special guests were about to come to the restaurant. "Lord Tang, here we are." Scorpion drove in front of the restaurant and said coldly,